The world has always loved a good rivalry. Ancient Rome versus Carthage, Britain versus France, Batman versus Joker. But in modern times, nothing draws quite as much commentary and occasional unintentional comedy as the ever-smoldering comparison between China and India, especially when it comes to their militaries. On one side stands China, a steel-forged dragon with its sleek warships, stealth aircraft, hypersonic missiles, and an unrelenting appetite for technological supremacy. On the other side lumbers India, the self-proclaimed world's largest democracy, attempting to keep pace with patched-up Russian imports, questionable logistical chains, and a defense doctrine that occasionally feels like it was designed by a Bollywood director between song rehearsals. This isn't just a comparison, it's a spectacle. Let's start with China, because, frankly, it deserves the opening act. The People's Liberation Army PLA isn't merely an army. It's an industrial-scale masterpiece, a seamless fusion of state-backed research discipline strategy and technological acceleration so fast it makes Silicon Valley look like it's standing in line at an Indian railway station. China's military is divided into its three core strengths: air, sea, and land, plus the unspoken fourth, cyber. The PLA Air Force fields aircraft like the J-20 Mighty Dragon, a stealth fighter that doesn't just compete with fifth-generation designs, it hunts them. This is not an Air Force stuck tinkering with refurbished MiGs or endlessly debating procurement delays in Parliament. When Beijing decides to build 200 stealth jets, it builds them on schedule, with spare parts to boot. And let's not forget naval power. China's Navy has transformed into the largest fleet in the world, churning out warships faster than some nations build fishing boats. Its aircraft carriers, real carriers, not we welded some sheets and painted it gray carriers, signal its blue water ambitions. The Dragon isn't just content to guard its shores. It's rehearsing dominion of the entire Indo-Pacific. Meanwhile, its missile arsenal includes hypersonic weapons that leave Western defense analysts nervously adjusting their ties in think tank briefings. DF-17s don't project power. They remind everyone else at the table to please sit quietly and not interrupt the grown-ups. Now, let's swivel our gaze toward India. Picture, if you will, a bustling bazaar. There's color, chaos, shouting merchants, and yes, a cow sitting in the middle of the street, unbothered. Now imagine building a modern military in that environment. You've just imagined India's defense establishment. India loves to talk up its military, and indeed, it fields large numbers, over 1 million active personnel, nuclear weapons, and a theoretical air force of roughly 600 combat aircraft. But here's where the reality TV energy kicks in. Many of these planes, they date back to the Cold War. India's vaunted MiG-21s, nicknamed flying coffins, have been crashing with such consistency that the term combat losses often refers to combat with gravity. Procurement? Oh, delightful chaos. India's Rafale deal from France made headlines for a decade. By the time they finally arrived, China's stealth jets had already clocked in training hours over simulated battlefields. India claps proudly for buying 36 jets. China quietly produces that number every fiscal quarter, then uses the spare time to design the next generation. And don't get me started on aircraft carriers. India proudly sails the INS Vikramaditya, a refitted Soviet-era hull that first floated when cassette tapes were still trendy. It eventually added the INS Vikrant, a domestically built carrier that took longer to complete than China's entire high-speed rail network. China watched this and, with a smirk, launched its Fujian carrier complete with electromagnetic catapults just to keep things interesting. Military scholars often say amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. China's military supply chain hums like a high-speed maglev train, while India's, well, let's just say, it's more like a bicycle stuck in Delhi traffic. China's defense industry is self-sufficient. It designs, produces, and deploys weapons at industrial scale. India, it's caught in a perpetual shopping spree. One day, it's buying Russian tanks, the next day American artillery, then maybe Israeli drones sprinkled in like coriander garnish. Interoperability, good luck, it's like plugging Android cables into an iPhone. Fuel, spare parts, munitions, China stockpiles with precision. India, meanwhile, sometimes struggles to maintain enough artillery shells for a sustained conflict. During the 2020 skirmishes at Galwan, reports suggested Indian troops were short on proper cold weather gear while Chinese forces arrived dressed for the runway at the Arctic Winter Games. Nothing says military preparedness like frostbite in the Himalayas. Modern war isn't just fought on mountains or seas, it's fought in code, data, and signals. China's cyber warfare units, let's be honest, are infamous, capable of breaching networks with frightening skill. Its electronic warfare can jam, blind, and paralyze adversary systems. India, oh, it has cyber ambitions, sure. But while China graduates 20,000 top-tier engineers annually who end up writing AI-driven attack scripts, India is busy debating whether to ban TikTok again for national security reasons. It's like bringing a calculator to a quantum physics competition. Of course, India has one undeniable strength: press releases. Its defense ministers and generals excel in grand declarations. "We will teach China a lesson," they thunder. This is often followed by meetings, then committees, then subcommittees, then budget delays, and eventually, a procurement order that won't be fulfilled until 2037. By then, China's military will likely be preparing for operations on Mars. The dragon moves in calculated silence, the elephant trumpets loudly, then sits down halfway up the hill, panting. The icy peaks of the Himalayas have long been more than just breathtaking scenery, they've become the world's highest theater of geopolitical farce. Here, at altitudes where helicopters gasp for air and soldiers struggle with oxygen deprivation, China and India have engaged in their peculiar border disputes, which, at times, look less like military confrontations and more like competitive mountaineering combined with awkward shoving matches. China, with its state-of-the-art infrastructure and seamless supply chains, treats these altitudes like an extended training ground. India, meanwhile, treats them like a surprise party that nobody prepared for. When the Galwan Valley skirmish erupted in 2020, much of the world's reaction was confusion. Were these two nuclear-armed powers seriously duking it out with sticks and stones? The answer was yes, and it was glorious in its absurdity. On one side, China's troops marched in, armed with spiked batons, tactical gear, and night vision equipment. Their logistics pipeline, perfectly intact. Their winter gear, designed for Siberian-level cold. Their orders, precise and executed with clockwork discipline. On the other side, India's soldiers bravely advanced heroic, yes, but equipped with outdated rifles and, in some cases, commercially purchased winter jackets that would have looked more at home in a Delhi street market than on a battlefield. Reports emerged of troops improvising with what they had, reinforcing the image of an army that relies more on grit than gear. Admirable, absolutely. Competitive against a force like the Plague, less so. The clash left dozens dead, but it also left something else, a crystal-clear display of China's organized military machine versus India's jugaad approach. This word, beloved in Indian culture, roughly translates to quick fix or creative workaround. Unfortunately, creative workarounds don't exactly scream modern military readiness. If war is won on logistics, then roads and railways are the veins of an army. China has transformed Tibet and Xinjiang with superhighways, tunnels, and high-speed rail reaching dizzying altitudes. Troops can mobilize quickly, tanks roll in hours, and supplies flow like water. India, well, India has plans, beautiful, ambitious plans that sit in government files, occasionally announced with fanfare during Independence Day speeches. But execution, that's another story. Building roads in India often involves layers of bureaucracy, local protests, and the occasional holy cow grazing in the middle of the construction site. In practical terms, while China can send a mechanized battalion to the frontier before breakfast, India might still be waiting for a committee to approve the blueprint for a new bridge. China soldiers train rigorously under one of the most disciplined regiments in the world. Their exercises simulate multi-front wars, cyber assaults, and urban combat scenarios with precision timing. They run drills in deserts, mountains, jungles, and mock cities. Even their parades resemble choreographed ballets if ballets featured missile launchers and goose-stepping infantry. India's army, in contrast, spends more time in ad hoc conflict zones dealing with insurgencies than preparing for high-tech warfare. While Chinese troops experiment with AI-driven war games, some Indian units are still conducting manual paperwork drills that wouldn't look out of place in the 1970s. The difference shows, in simulated war games, China's forces tend to operate with surgical cohesion, while India's often resemble an orchestra where half the musicians brought the wrong instruments. Oh, India and its defense scandals, they are the stuff of legend. Consider the tale of the Arjun tank, a domestically built main battle tank that spent over 40 years in development, cost billions, and ended up being so heavy it couldn't cross most of India's own bridges. The army reluctantly accepted a few dozen units while quietly buying Russian T-90s instead. It's like announcing you'll make your own Ferrari, then proudly unveiling a golf cart. Or take the INS Vikrant carrier saga. Construction delays stretched for decades, with cost overruns so spectacular that even Bollywood couldn't script them better. By the time it finally launched, China's shipyards had pumped out multiple destroyers, cruisers, and even a new carrier, because why build one carrier when you can build a fleet? And then there's India's infamous Bofors scandal from the 1980s, which somehow still gets mentioned every time the word procurement comes up. The fact that a 40-year-old scandal is still shorthand for corruption in defense deals says everything you need to know about systemic inertia. China's military modernization is like a 400-meter dash, intense, fast, and meticulously timed. Its annual defense budget pours into AI, robotics, hypersonics, and naval expansion. Beijing doesn't just plan for today. It plans for 2040, for 2050, for scenarios where it faces down the U.S. Navy in the Pacific. India, meanwhile, prefers more of a leisurely stroll. Committees form, white papers are published, then forgotten, then rediscovered by the next administration. By the time decisions are made, the original problem has either evolved or been replaced entirely. It's governance by nostalgia, looking backward while everyone else moves forward. Yes, India has nuclear weapons, but possessing nukes and effectively integrating them into a credible deterrence strategy are two different things. China's nuclear triad land-based missiles, submarine-launched missiles, and strategic bombers forms a coherent and constantly modernized shield. Its DF-1 ICBMs can hit virtually anywhere on Earth, silently reminding adversaries that the dragon doesn't roar, it simply raises an eyebrow. India's deterrence strategy, meanwhile, sometimes feels more like a loud trumpet blast, noisy enough to be heard, but lacking the subtlety of genuine menace. Its nuclear delivery systems lag in both range and reliability, and its submarines vital for second strike capability are still few and far between, with some so underpowered they seem better suited for coastal joyrides than global patrols. If military power were a chessboard, China is playing in 3 dimensions with laser pointers and predictive AI algorithms, while India is occasionally arguing with itself over which pawns are allowed to move diagonally. It's not that India is irrelevant, it's simply that China operates on a level that forces everyone else, even major Western powers, to take notice. India's military might be large, yes, but size without cohesion is like trying to win a Formula One race in a school bus. If what we just tackled earlier was about showing China and India squaring off in the thin Himalayan air, then let's us down from the mountains and into the industrial heartlands, the real engine rooms of power. Here, in the foundries, factories, and laboratories where war is quietly prepared long before the first shot is fired, we see the clearest and most unforgiving contrast between the dragon and the elephant. China's industrial base hums like a perfectly tuned symphony, steel, silicon, and science blending seamlessly into military capability. India's, on the other hand. Picture an orchestra where half the musicians are late, the conductor is stuck in traffic, and the violin section is busy filling out paperwork for new instruments. Let's not sugarcoat it. China is the arsenal of the 21st century. Its factories churn out tanks, drones, and artillery pieces like their smartphones, on schedule, in bulk, and ready to flood the battlefield. While India is still negotiating delivery dates for rifles, China is testing laser weapons. In the span of 2 decades, China went from importing advanced weaponry to becoming one of the world's top arms exporters. Its Type 99 tanks roll off production lines like assembly line sedans. Its drone fleet is so vast and diverse it makes even the US military take notes, and its shipyards. They've reached almost science fiction levels of productivity. There are jokes among defense analysts that China can build a warship faster than India can convene a procurement review meeting. China's shipbuilding prowess is legendary. Entire destroyers appear on satellite imagery like mushrooms after rain. One month, there's an empty dry dock. The next month, a frigate is undergoing sea trials. In comparison, India's shipbuilding process has been best described as enthusiastic, but tragically slow, with carriers taking decades and submarines crawling along at a pace that would make even glaciers impatient. Where China's defense sector is a disciplined industrial ballet, India's is a bureaucratic soap opera. Layers upon layers of paperwork, approvals, and revised project timelines ensure that even modest upgrades become multi-decade sagas. Take the Tejas Light Combat Aircraft LCA program. First proposed in 1983, it finally entered service in 2016 after 33 years of design changes, testing delays, and endless debates. By the time it rolled out, China had already fielded not just fourth-generation fighters, but fifth-generation stealth jets. The Tejas, despite its patriotic name, became a running joke even within India, more light comedy aircraft than light combat aircraft. India's Defense Research and Development Organization DRDO loves ambitious announcements, hypersonic weapons, laser systems, indigenous jets. The press conferences are glorious, but the execution? Well, let's say China has already tested hypersonics while India is still holding ceremonial ribbon cuttings at test facilities. India's dependence on imports is legendary. Need tanks? Call Russia. Need missiles? Ring up Israel. Need transport planes? Hello, USA. The result? A patchwork quilt of foreign-made systems that don't always talk to each other. China, meanwhile, learned from its own dependency in the 1990s and vowed never to be beholden to others again. It reverse-engineered, innovated, and then outpaced its J-20 stealth fighter. Homegrown, its hypersonic glide vehicles. Homegrown, its missile defense systems. Homegrown, India's reliance on imports has even resulted in absurdities like running out of spare parts mid-conflict simulations because Russian components didn't arrive on time. Meanwhile, China stockpiles not just the parts but the factories themselves. Modern war is no longer just tanks and troops, it's sensors, satellites, and supercomputers. China dominates here too. Its investments in AI-driven warfare, quantum communication, and cybernetics are light years ahead. In simulated war games, Chinese AI has beaten human generals repeatedly, refining strategies no human brain could track in real time. India, it has ambitious plans for AI, yes, but most of them are still trapped in policy drafts and committee discussions. When China is deploying autonomous drone swarms in live exercises, India is still announcing roadmaps for AI in defense with ceremonial PowerPoints. This gap isn't just technological, it's cultural. China's command structure absorbs tech innovation seamlessly. India's often struggles with inter-service rivalries and outdated protocols. Imagine trying to plug a quantum computer into a system still using fax machines. India's defense budget may seem large on paper, but a significant portion is eaten up by salaries and pensions. Modernization comes last. China's budget, meanwhile, is not only larger but ruthlessly efficient, cutting-edge R&D, production lines, and global naval expansion. A simple example, India spends billions maintaining outdated MiG-21 squadrons simply because retiring them would upset entrenched bureaucratic circles. China, by contrast, retires jets like one clears out last year's smartphone. No nostalgia, no hesitation. Let's compare optics. When China showcases its military, it's a cinematic spectacle. Stealth jets streak overhead, missiles roll past in chilling silence, troops goose-step with robotic precision. The message is clear. Here is power, disciplined and unflinching. When India holds parades, they're colorful, loud, and undeniably charming, but somehow, they resemble more of a cultural festival than a fearsome military display. Dancers, elephants, and floats with papier-mâché missiles don't exactly terrify adversaries. One imagines Beijing's generals watching with polite smiles and mild amusement, as though applauding a school play. Of course, we cannot skip the encore of India's defense scandal saga. The 2016 incident of a missing Scorpion submarine blueprint leak was priceless. 20,000 pages of classified details ended up exposed online. While China refines its stealth subs, India's were being dissected on Reddit. And then there's the tale of India's Sindh-Hurikshak submarine, which tragically exploded in port in 2013 due to sloppy ammunition handling. The resulting spectacle of India losing a billion-dollar asset without firing a shot became a grim punchline across naval circles. China's war machine is the product of decades of centralized planning, industrial mobilization, and relentless innovation. India's is, frankly, a hybrid of nostalgia and improvisation, brave soldiers burdened by ancient equipment and red tape thicker than tank armor. If these two ever faced off in a protracted, full-scale conflict, it wouldn't be a contest of equals. It would be like pitting a Formula One car against a hand-painted tuk-tuk, colorful, noisy, and utterly doomed in a straight race.